Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Authors on the Air. I'm your host, James Latwell, and with us today we have Bruce Borgos. And Bruce has a new novel out. It's called The Blue Horse, and it's the third installment in the Porter Beck series. It's becoming a reader favorite. I mean, I'm hearing all kinds of buzz about, not only this book, but, the Bitter Past and Shades of Mercy that came before. So, congratulations on another fun read. It was a blast to read this one, Bruce.
Oh, I appreciate it, and thanks for having me on again, Jim. Yeah, it was an interesting book to write because yeah, you've read my other two Porter Beck
Mhm.
novels. I try to always insert some real current stuff that's going on. Kind
Yeah.
of rip from the headlines things and try to integrate some of those pieces in my stories. This one has, just like the title might give you the sense of, a backdrop of wild horses, and it's not really what the book is about, but that's the setting. That's where everything kind of starts from in the story, and it's a very controversial, highly emotionally charged political
Yeah.
issue going on here, especially in Nevada.
Yeah, and I was going to touch on that. I mean, that whole wild horse roundup is very emotionally charged. People on both sides, have a lot of issues and emotions tied up in it. And I think you cover that really well, and you kind of show that you know that environment. And it's not, like you said, it's not the centerpiece of the book, but it gives you a flavor for what's going on there and what Porter Beck has to deal with in the Blue Horse. So maybe tell folks a little bit about what Porter finds, ahead of him in this story.
So, as I mentioned, the story starts with a wild horse roundup. And if you've never seen what that looks like in modern times, you should just go on YouTube and search for wild horse roundup. And what you'll see immediately is a bunch of wild horses being chased through the range by a helicopter.
All right.
And that's the way that the BLM normally does those, what they call gathers, which is really a political distinction. Roundups is really what everybody else refers to them as. But they're a more efficient way for the government to try to collect these horses and then move them to a place where they can adopt them out to people who maybe can put in the time to train them and domesticate them. It doesn't always work out that way, but anyway, Porter is witnessing this, one of these roundups, with one of his deputies, and sees a helicopter go down. Not sure why, and when they get over there, they find something that they didn't want to find, and the story kind of just jumps from there
Hmm.
into this whole war that's going on between wild horse advocates and the government and the people, really what who I think are behind the government's position, and that's cattle ranchers. Because cattle ranchers don't like wild horses, and they don't want to see wild horses out there grazing the same land their cattle do.
Right.
And there's a lot of money in Congress floating around with from lobbyists who work for the cattle industry. So that's why it's really a politically huge issue. And bodies just start turning up in this story, and Porter Beck is trying to figure out really who's behind this, because all the fingers are pointing to wild horse advocates, but there are some things that don't add up. So it's another kind of who done it and how fast can I get to the point where I can figure out who actually did it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I thought it was really well done. And there's some other elements kind of ripped from the headlines that you've thrown in there. I don't want to give too much away, but the whole, mining for precious minerals in wilderness areas kind of takes a little piece of this too. So I thought the two were very well done as a backdrop for a larger mystery.
Yeah, and it's always interesting when you try to mesh very disparate ideas and things that are going on together and find a way to link them. But
Yeah.
you're right, Jim. In this particular case, this is another thing that, just like wild horses, not a lot of people who live outside of the Western U.S. in this country have a good sense of mining, unless it's coal mining back east or what have you. But yeah, we're heavily invested in rare earth mineral mining,
Mhm.
and it's a race. It's really a race with China now to get what we think our share of the lithium market should be. And both President Biden and Trump, even now, are trying to accelerate that in our position in that market, which means increase the mining that's going on.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, just like with any other mineral mining, there are consequences. And there's consequences to the ecology and to the animal life that live in that area and the water table. And, we need lithium because it powers all of our electric batteries now, and it gives electric batteries their longer life. So it's not something we can afford to do without, but at the
Yeah.
same time, we seem to be rushing kind of headlong into this, like we do a lot of things, without really understanding what the long-term consequences might be.
Yeah, that's very true. And I thought the two together in this book really kind of brought out the fact that a lot of people's understanding of the West, and in particularly in remote environments, is kind of this idealistic kind of, place where, unicorns run by and everybody's happy, and
Right.
things are perfect.
Right.
But here's two examples of real life events that are out there that kind of complicate life
Yeah.
in the West, and you throw Porter Beck, I mean, right into the middle of that. He's such an interesting character. I like his progression and how he's changed over the course of the books.
Mm.
And for folks who haven't picked up the series yet, I think you can jump right into the Blue Horse and not miss much. But it's a it's a he's a great character with a really important character flaw, if you want to call it that he's got looming over him.
Mm.
How did you come to design that and pick that as what you're going to do with Porter?
Well, I think, like, I was a reader long before I was a writer, and I always liked protagonists or main characters who had something to deal with in their life, something to overcome, whether it be a physical or emotional obstacle. And I think the best characters are real characters, they're real life people, and they have real problems. And so I thought, well, what would be an interesting hurdle for a law enforcement guy in a rural area to have to deal with? And I came up with this idea of having him having night blindness.
Yeah.
Technically it's called retinitis pigmentosa, but it's commonly referred to as night blindness. And so while it's like he leads this dual life.
Yeah.
He sometimes refers to himself as a daylight man because during the day he can see pretty much fine and operate as well as anybody. But the rods and the cones in his retinas don't function like everybody else's. It's genetic mutation. And at night or in very low light, he can't see at all. So he's effectively blind and has having to come up with ways to deal with that, and is facing a very uncertain future, since night blindness is something that typically gets worse over time.
Yeah, and I think that looming over him, it's thread throughout the book, but you can feel it. That, I mean, he's got this other ticking clock going on, as opposed to the mystery he's working on unlocking. But I mean, if sunlight's going away, darkness is coming. I've got to get ready for this.
Yeah.
It puts a whole other layer of pressure on Porter Beck.
Yeah, you're right. It's always the ticking clock for him. He's looking at, if he's outside, he's looking for, where's the sun in the sky? What time of day is it? How
Yeah.
much time do I have left? And where am I going to be when the sun goes down? So those are all things that he's constantly thinking about. And quite honestly, it's driving him nuts sometimes. He's
Yeah.
getting very worried about it emotionally. He's thinking about, how is this thing going to take its toll on not only my life, but the people I care about in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. And those other characters that he cares about, You've done a great job with the supporting cast in this book, and the series. But I mean, Brinley and Charlie Bluehorse are two that come to mind that are just so well developed. You really care about these characters, and the readers get interested in them. I mean, they're both strong, independent women. How did you come to write those two characters? They're very different people, but how did you come to write those two strong women like as you did?
Well, again, I'm always looking for the opportunity to create a nice character that readers will relate to. I love strong women characters in books, any kind of literature, really. I just appreciate someone who's very independent
Mhm.
and has a strong personality and is capable of doing a lot of different things. And both of those characters that you mentioned, Brinley, who is Beck's adopted sister, and Charlie Bluehorse, who has become, over the course of 3 books now, his romantic interest, um, are two, in a lot of ways, very similar women. They're while Charlie is actually a state police detective, and Brinley is, just a person who grew up around guns and knows more about guns than anybody else, including Porter. Um, they really provide not only emotional support for him, which sometimes he needs, but they're true partners in that sense of the word with him that he can rely on, and they will back him up, and they've got his back all the time. So I wanted characters that would challenge him and call him out occasionally, but love him intensely and be there for him. So
Yeah, and I think the trio of those three and other characters, but I mean, it makes for a great dynamic in all those relationships that are happening in the book. So again, well, really well done.
thank you.
Yeah. Now that you've got a successful series, going here, what's the most difficult part for you as an author to keep a series going?
I don't really run into a shortage of ideas for my next book anytime. At least I haven't so far. The advantage I have here in the place I live in Nevada, being right next door to uh, the federal land that is
Mm.
the very secretive areas out in the Nevada desert, like Area 51 and the Nevada test site. There's a lot of low hanging fruit for ideas, so that's not really a challenge for me. The biggest challenge I think that I'm constantly thinking about as I'm writing is, okay, I've got these characters that I think are pretty good.
Mhm.
How do I? What's the next step in their lives? How do I keep them moving in some sort of linear way, just as we all do throughout life, growing, running into problems, facing certain things that are tough, and overcoming those things, all the while, revolving around Porter Beck here.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm always thinking about. It's not enough, I don't think, Jim, as you well know, because you do such a great job of this, is taking those characters and yes, to some extent they need to be in the background. Porter Beck is my main character, but I'm now starting, as you see in the Blue Horse, starting to take some of these characters off in kind of their own little direction
Mhm.
and devote more of the story to them. And there's a little bit of a danger there because you don't want to take away too much focus from the character that your readers have come to love. But
Right.
hopefully they've come to love these other, semi-major characters just as much.
No, I think you've nailed it there. Now,
Mhm.
recently, if I understood this correctly, you were recognized by the Nevada State Legislature for your work. Tell us a little bit about that. What was that like?
It was a great day, really. I was very fortunate. One of the state assembly women had somehow come across The Bitter Past, my first book in the series, which is a book largely about Nevada's atomic history and how
Mm.
it's a dual timeline story. Part of it in the 1950s when we were exploding all of these nuclear bombs in the desert, and part of it in present day when Porter Beck is running into a murder of a retired FBI agent, is trying to put these two things together and figure out what's going on. But she'd read The Bitter Past and she loved it, and she said, this is such a great story about Nevada. I would love to have you up to the legislature so I could introduce you to everybody. So I went up one day a couple months ago and sat there in the state assembly, and she introduced me in my book. And then I did a book signing outside the assembly room there for a couple hours and talked to a bunch of people. And the great thing about that was all of them have this kind of innate interest in politics and history because they're politicians.
Yeah.
And they work in the legislature, and they love that history of Nevada. So it was very rewarding. That was one of the most rewarding days I've had as an author. So it was just
that was pretty cool. I saw that and I think, good for you. That was really awesome.
I mean, it was a great. It's fun. You get to, as authors, we get to do bookstores occasionally, and we go to author conferences, and we meet a lot of interesting people. And occasionally, we do library events occasionally, or maybe book clubs. All of those are great, but this was just extremely special for me.
Yeah, I bet it was.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. So, you're in the middle of a book tour. Where can folks find you next on your road trip?
So I will be, I'm glad you asked. I will be in Orange County at a place called Book Carnival in Orange this Saturday at 2 p.m. with the great author James Byrne, who writes the Des Limerick mysteries, the most recent of which is Chain Reaction. And he is a terrific author. If you haven't read James Byrne, you got to pick up his books. They are lightning fast and a super read. And then following that, the following Friday, I will be in Highlands Ranch, Colorado, right outside of Denver, at the Highlands Ranch Library. So I'm going to do a little talk there and hopefully have a nice crowd. And then I've got a few events trickling in after that take me really all the way up through October. So if you stay tuned to my Facebook, you'll get a good idea of where I'm going to be and when.
That's fantastic. That's good for you. And I'll see you at BoucherCon in New Orleans, no doubt.
Absolutely, man, where it's nice and hot and humid and sticky.
And hurricane season. What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? I think it was like a few years ago where we canceled that, right? Because of hurricane season,
because a hurricane was coming in, right? Yeah. So we've done that. So this is going to be just fine.
Yeah.
So let's end up with 3 quick hits. I'll put you in Porter Beck's headspace, and we'll just answer three quick questions.
Okay.
What's Porter's favorite drink? What does he like to drink?
He loves red wine, as I do. So he doesn't really have a go-to, maybe an old fashioned now and again, but he's a connoisseur of good red wine.
Gotcha. And how about his music? What does Porter listen to?
Well, this is another kind of peculiar thing to Porter. He has this, what he thinks is more of a curse than a blessing. And that is this very strange and very rare ability to remember everything he's ever heard in his life, which includes song lyrics. So he has no particular favorite. He remembers everything. Unfortunately for him, even though his brain remembers everything he's ever heard, whether it's a conversation or a song or whatever, sometimes he doesn't hear it correctly. So frequently he gets lyrics wrong because even though he remembers it in his head, he never knew it was the correct lyric. So he's always saying something else.
I love it. And then finally, what's Porter's greatest fear?
His greatest fear, at least currently, is being incapable. And that's mostly due to the thought that at some point in his life, he is most likely going to be completely blind and to some degree helpless, at least not able to do his job, and not able to care for the people that he loves and being more of a burden to them.
Yeah, no, that perfectly sums up him and his character. We've been talking with Bruce Borgos, the author of Blue Horse. If you like Longmire, and Craig Johnson or CJ Box, this is your jam. So, go out and meet Bruce on the road. Bruce, this was another fun read. Congratulations to you, and wish you all the success in this book.
Thanks so much, buddy. I really appreciate you having me on again. It's always great to be here, and I will see you at BoucherCon.
Absolutely. We'll see you soon, Bruce.
Alrighty, bye-bye.